It is said that about 240 years ago, during a siege of the Shaolin monastery by the Manchu soldiers, a fire broke out which turned the monastery into ashes and brought death to many monks and unshaved disciples there. However, a few highly skilled martial artists escaped from the calamity. They changed their names and went into hiding. The few survivors included Moi, the Buddhist mistress, one of the 5 elders of Shaolin, who went into hiding and settled down on a mountain at the border of Sichuan province in China. In order to deal with the defectors who betrayed Shaolin, Moi found it necessary to create a new fighting method to cope with Shaolin Kung Fu. This new system would take advantage of all the weak points of the existing Shaolin techniques. Finally, she succeeded in creating such a system and later passed it to a girl named Yim Wing Chun. Since then, a completely new Kung Fu system developed. It is the Wing Chun Tsun. Regardless of the credibility of the above story, the techniques of the Wing Chun system are indeed developed with the intention to overcome the techniques of Shaolin Kung Fu, and in complete contradiction to the traditional theory of Chinese martial arts. For instance, in the existing Shaolin system, wide stances, such as the quadrilateral stance, and the front stance are adopted in order to lower the center of gravity to obtain stability. However, in Wing Chun Kung Fu, the most important point is to maintain the stability of the center of gravity, rather than to adopt a low stance. On the contrary, if the fighter is in a higher position than his opponent, it is easier for him to attack and defend. The character 2 adduction stance is a typical posture created in line with this idea. The character 2 adduction stance is posed in such a way that the feet are kept apart but bent inwards so that an equilateral triangle is formed. When posing this, the weight is rested on the knees, being firmly supported by the feet, posing in a theory similar to that of the tumbler or the Eiffel Tower of Paris. As regards exertion of power, a practitioner of the Shaolin system uses rigid force. If 2 opponents both resort to physical power, the one who has a stronger physical power will always defeat the other one. But there are too many people who are strongly built. Therefore, a Wing Chun practitioner would have to find another way to defeat his opponent, not by crashing his power with his opponent, but to borrow the power from the opponent. Further, a traditional Kung Fu man would adopt long-range tactics, in that it allows the opponent a chance to evade or to reorganize an attack again. A Wing Chun man prefers fighting at close range to launch continuous attacks that give no chance for his opponent to get a breath. Actually, the greatest deviation of Wing Chun Kung Fu from the traditional Kung Fu system lies in concept rather than in appearance. The traditional Kung Fu places emphasis on a prearranged sequence of movements. However, in real situations, for example in a street fight, an enemy, unlike a partner, will never launch movements in the same sequence as during practice. He may do this, or he may do this, and he never tells. Wing Chun is consolidated with an idea to move according to how the enemy moves. For this reason, Chi Sao is designed for training the quick reactions of a Wing Chun man.